Imagine facing an enemy you can't see, hiding in the jungle shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But this wasn't some phantom of war, it was a woman. American soldiers said her name in hushed tones, as if even speaking it out loud could summon her. Apache. She didn't command an army. She didn't carry high-tech weapons or tanks. She didn't need to. What made her terrifying was what she did to people. This is a story the US military tried to bury beneath official reports and changing politics. But veterans still remember her. They remember the screams that echoed through the trees. They remember what American soldiers found when the jungle went quiet. And before this ends, you'll understand why they called her the most horrifying woman of the Vietnam War. So before we dive in, do me a quick favor. If you love real untold stories, subscribe to Fleek of History, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see war forever. Vietnam. Before the flames, before the war turned the land into a nightmare, Vietnam was a place of quiet mornings and muddy rice fields. Families worked the paddies at dawn, children laughed near riverbanks, and life moved slowly as it had for generations, but empires had already touched it. Since the late 1800s, Vietnam had been under French colonial control. When World War II ended and Japan's occupation collapsed, one man, Ho Chi Minh, declared the country free. The French refused to let go. From 1946 to 1954, Vietnam became a furnace of resistance. The Viet Minh, a guerrilla force led by Ho Chi Minh, fought the French to the bitter end. When the smoke cleared after the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, the colonial era was over. But peace didn't come. The Geneva Accord split Vietnam in two: Communist North, led by Ho Chi Minh, and anti-communist South, supported by the United States and President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The US feared the spread of communism across Asia, so they poured money, weapons, and military advisors into the South. By the early 1960s, that advisory role had turned into something else entirely when the Gulf of Tonkin incident hit in 1964. After reports that American ships had been attacked, President Lyndon B. Johnson got the green light to send troops into combat. By 1965, thousands of US Marines were landing in Da Nang. 2 years later, that number had exploded to nearly 500,000, and in the jungles between those soldiers and their homes, the legend of Apache was being born. The Invisible Army. The Viet Cong were nothing like the armies Americans had faced before. They didn't march in neat lines or wear gleaming uniforms. They were ghosts, disappearing into the same villages they fought in, melting into crowds of farmers by day, turning into killers by night. They built secret tunnels that stretched for miles. Entire underground cities, complete with kitchens, weapon caches, and hospitals, were hidden beneath the jungle floor. Above ground, traps and explosives waited for the unlucky. A single step could end a patrol. The North Vietnamese funneled supplies and new fighters through the infamous Ho Chi Minh Trail, a spiderweb of hidden routes that ran through Laos and Cambodia. The US bombed it endlessly, but no matter how many craters appeared, the trail never truly closed. Within that shadow world, one woman began to stand out, not because she was seen often, but because of what she left behind. The birth of a legend whispers about Apache started spreading among American units around late 1965. Patrols that went missing would sometimes be found days later, tied, scarred, or worse. Some soldiers swore they'd heard the screams of captured men echoing through the jungle right before an ambush. Others found symbols carved into trees near the bodies, as if someone wanted to leave a message: "You're next." At first, no one believed the rumors. A woman capable of that? Impossible. But the evidence kept showing up. What set Apache apart wasn't just the violence, it was the purpose behind it. Witnesses described wounds that weren't meant to kill quickly. These were methodical, personal. It wasn't about victory. It was about fear. She wanted US soldiers to know what would happen if she caught them, and to dread that fate more than death itself. The name Apache came from US troops themselves. They compared her to the ruthless fighters of the old American frontier, not realizing how ironic it was. A feared woman of another land, now haunting American soldiers who once saw themselves as the conquerors. Her real name was never known. She blended in like any other guerrilla. Black pajamas, sandals cut from old tires, a rifle slung low, face unreadable. But among captured prisoners and frontline survivors, her legend grew with every scar. Every symbol. Fear as a weapon by early 1966. Her reputation had spread across jungle platoons. U.S. troops were told before missions, if you get caught, pray it's not her. Apache didn't just fight men, she broke their minds. The jungle carried her legend like an infection. Soldiers lay awake at night, staring into the dark, afraid they might hear her victims' cries. Some begged to be reassigned away from regions where she operated. She turned fear into a weapon sharper than any blade, in a place where visibility ended 5 feet in front of your muzzle. That terror was absolute. Reports from intelligence units described a woman who led a small strike squad of 15 to 20 Viet Cong. She was believed to train them herself, how to ambush patrols, plant punji stakes, vanish into tunnels, and move like wind through the trees. Every account agreed on one thing: she was effective. Every place Apache was rumored to be, morale dropped, mistakes increased, ambushes multiplied. She became, in essence, an unseen commander of chaos. Women of War Apache wasn't alone. By 1966, U.S. intelligence estimated that nearly 1/3 of the Viet Cong were women. Unlike in Western militaries then, Vietnamese women were raised to see war as everyone's responsibility. Girls trained with rifles. Women carried supplies across minefields, planted explosives under bridges, even joined frontline assaults. To them, war wasn't a man's duty. It was a national burden. And Apache exemplified that philosophy to its extremes. To American troops, fighting women was disorienting. They were trained to look for male targets, to separate civilians from combatants. Apache shattered that illusion. She looked ordinary until it was too late. The Cu Chi nightmare near a small region northwest of Saigon lies Cu Chi, a name that still chills veterans to this day. What looked like peaceful farmland hid an underground labyrinth of death. Dozens of U.S. patrols disappeared there. Others came back, changed. Many of the worst scenes, the ones even war reporters refused to describe, were linked to that area. And in the minds of soldiers, there was only one explanation: Apache had been there. She and her crew used the tunnels as their base, surfacing only when it was time to strike. They would hit fast, disappear faster, and leave a trail of horror behind. For all their technological might, bombs, tanks, napalm, the Americans couldn't root her out. She was like smoke, elusive, untouchable until 1969. The sniper who ended her reign that year, U.S. Marines sent one of their deadliest marksmen, Carlos Hathcock, into the dense jungle near Quang Ngai. Hathcock had already built a fearsome reputation. He could hold his breath for minutes, crawl for days without detection, and hit targets from distances most soldiers couldn't even see. His mission: eliminate a high-ranking female, Viet Cong leader responsible for torturing and executing American and South Vietnamese captives. For days, he tracked through mud, heat, and silence. Then one afternoon, through the scope of his rifle, he saw her, a small woman, confident stance, giving hand signals to her squad. Every instinct told him it was her. He waited for hours, motionless, until the wind shifted in his favor. Then he squeezed the trigger. One clean shot, and the figure collapsed. The jungle went silent. When Marines recovered the body, the markings matched the stories, symbols carved into her skin, just like the ones left on her victims. The soldiers believed without doubt Apache was dead. Her identity, though, remained a mystery. No one knew her real name, where she was born, or how she rose to such power. She vanished as she had lived, in shadows, legend or myth. Even after Hathcock's mission, stories about Apache refused to die. Some believed the military exaggerated her cruelty to justify operations. Others swore she was real, that her name had scarred entire battalions. History may never confirm the full truth. But what's undeniable is how fear itself became one of the most effective weapons in that war. Apache changed how the U.S. military thought about psychological warfare, survival, and even gender on the battlefield. Training manuals after the war included new sections on capture resilience, many drawn from lessons learned in Vietnam's jungles. Her myth lived on because of what she represented: the raw, unfiltered terror of a war where no enemy looked like an enemy until it was already too late. Closing words half a century later, Her ghost still lingers in the memories of those who fought there. Apache became a face of fear in a war built on confusion and chaos. Whether she was one woman, a composite of several, or something the soldiers' minds created to give shape to the horror, they all agree on one thing: she felt terrifyingly real. The Vietnam War ended in 1975, but the legend of Apache didn't fade. It only grew stronger. Maybe because in every war there's always someone who embodies the pure human side of fear. This is just one of those stories. One too haunting to forget, too dark to dismiss. If you've made it this far, your stomach's probably turning, but your mind's alive. That's what Fleek of History is about. The uncomfortable truths that shaped our world. Hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell. Because next time we're going even deeper into the shadows of history, where truth and terror often wear the same face.